Thank you everyone for coming. My name is Paul. I'd like to first welcome, thank Samsung Accelerator for allowing us to offer this space. I'd like to let James speak. Shane, he's part of a company in the incubator program for the Samsung Accelerator.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Shane Eten. My company here is called Lotik. We have a wireless water sensor that clamps onto pipes. I will say that out of all the companies here, we are a plumbing company, so we're not as exciting as the virtual reality. Or there's a company that sits over there that has a watch that you can go like this and you can turn your stereo up and down. It's so empowering. We've got a clamp that goes on pipes. So essentially Fitbit for pipes, but what's been great about the Accelerator is that it's provided the resources necessary to start it, but it also gives you the ability to sort of be on your own and create your own team. I will say that you guys must have timed this perfectly, and I think you guys had more information than I did. Samsung just announced that it's going to invest $1.2 billion over the next 4 years into consumer-centered IoT. So a lot of that money is actually going to be spent by a group that we're a part of, the Global Innovation Center. So very, very good timing. We're very excited to have you here. If you guys have any questions about the Accelerator, just let me know. Or you can go to our website and there's an email address there. So I look forward to seeing the special stuff that's in store for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. And by the way, that company you mentioned with the virtual reality watch, we're going to be at something on Thursday. But I'll let Linda, before I introduce myself, I'd like to introduce her, the organizer of the group, Linda Drabik. So she's actually in San Francisco this week. So, but she's there physically, but she's still here. So.
Hi everyone, thank you Paul. So first a quick shout out to, thank you to Paul for helping to organize some of the logistics and topic of this event. Definitely appreciate that. And welcome to the 33rd IoT New York Meetup. I assume there are lots of folks in the room that are regular members of the Meetup, as well as some new folks. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and kick this off. So great, the hashtag for tonight's event is IOT NY, and it's always the hashtag that we use for our events, so feel free to use that. And we'll also be sharing information about our speaker and HYPR Corp, which will also have their hashtags and handles. To keep in touch, you can reach me there on Twitter at Linda Drabik, and I'm always interested in hearing back from folks who are interested in presenting or are seeing interesting things in the space, because as you'll see in this deck, what I like to do is feedback that back to our members so that every month you can come together and this becomes educational, but also a great way to network with others. Great. So as I mentioned, today is the 33rd IoT New York Meetup. I founded the Meetup in 2013. I think at the first meetup there were probably about 13 members who showed, and now we're over 3,700 members and growing. So definitely feel free to spread the word, and we're really happy to have you here tonight. So for tonight's topic, it's going to touch on biometric security. Here's a quick snapshot of the agenda here. Paul and my sections are going to kind of merge together, where I'll take you through this deck where at the beginning of each meetup I go through a few announcements, acknowledge the sponsors, note the topic and the speaker for the evening, and then a really important part is attendee announcements and asks, where folks in the crowd there, you can kind of shout out and kind of let others know what you're working on or interesting things you're looking to do, and that's another way to good way to help our members connect. Great. As part of this, let's see, Paul Rothbein will also, who you heard from the beginning, will also be giving a brief announcement about his upcoming publication. And again, special thank you to Paul for helping out on the logistics front this month. We really appreciate it. Great. And then, here we go, switching to headphone here. And then that'll take us into a cybersecurity point of view on biometric authentication and IoT. And that's going to be led by Bojan Simic. We're very happy to have Bojan, who is a CTO of HYPR Corp, and some members of his team here tonight. As I kind of mentioned, we try to delve into a different topic area of IoT each month. We've been going for over 3 years, and we have yet to, it feels like we have yet to scratch the surface on all the interesting topics within IoT. I know that data and security are often, in the context of any topic, often things that we'll all kind of discuss each month. So it's a really relevant and great topic that we're going to be speaking on biometrics today. And then finally, depending on how close we run to 8:15, 8:30, we'll be wrapping up the event after Bojan takes some Q&A following his presentation. Just a friendly reminder that we'll need to clear the space between 8:30 and 9 p.m. with a 9 p.m. hard stop. Just because we want to make sure that we're good guests and that we clear the space so that the folks at Samsung Accelerator have the opportunity to shut down. But also feel free to keep the conversations going at Flatiron Hall, just down the street downstairs. That could be a good venue. If folks are continuing and want to keep talking, we're just suggesting that that could be a good place if you're still hanging out past 9. Great. Okay, so now I wanted to give a big thank you to our sponsors, like the food, venue, and beverage sponsors, the folks from Samsung Accelerator. Thank you so much for having us in that great space, and we definitely appreciate you hosting tonight. Also, for videography, thanks to Jolly behind the camera there from Internet Society. Thanks, Jolly. Great. So here's just a few pieces of info around the Samsung Accelerator, and I know that we had an entrepreneur from the Accelerator speak at the beginning. Folks in the room from Samsung, feel free to stand up if you'd like to say anything else. Otherwise, I know the entrepreneur was your main representative tonight.
Yes. Ali, Mia. Okay. Yeah, I guess we'll continue.
Great. Okay. Great. So just an announcement: the next IoT New York meetup. Just to take care. We like to take care of the housekeeping at the beginning so that everyone can fully focus on the talk through the end of the evening. So for the next IoT New York meetup, just to mark your calendars, it has been announced today on the meetup page. It's on July 15th and 16th. It's a little bit of a different event because our meetup has been invited to participate in this large multi-day event at AT&T Field. It's the home of the SF Giants. However, since most New Yorkers will be in New York, I wanted to let you know that I'll be arranging for the panel and potentially other pieces of the event to be videoed so that you can attend on demand from the comfort of your home or office.
Live stream.
Yes. Well, not live streaming because it'll be too late New York time. It'll be video on demand.
Okay.
So for anyone who can attend in person or wishes to, please feel free to get in touch with me because we have free tickets for members who actually show in person. And as mentioned, it's a time-shifted event. Great. A few community announcements in terms of related events and venues. Intel wanted us to announce that their Ultimate Coder Challenge for IoT is underway. Some of you guys may have seen this in the past where they put out a coder challenge and they provide an SDK, their commercial IoT development kit and tools, and they challenge these coders to build a commercially viable product in different categories. So these are the categories that the finalists are in: home automation, smart buildings, healthcare, retail, environmental, agriculture, and automotive. And so while this is underway and it's too late to apply as a developer, it might be interesting for some of you folks to check out what the judges are saying. The coders regularly blog, and you can kind of see their progress to an MVP. And so I encourage you to check that out if you are prototyping. It could be an interesting resource. Great. Another item for the community, we've been offered a 50% discount at CoLab Factory in Brooklyn. So I'll also post this information to the discussion board on the Meetup page, so you don't have to jot all this down, but just wanted to call it out. If any team is looking for virtual offices or co-working spaces in Brooklyn, there is a nice summer discount for our members. Great. In terms of makerspaces, I regularly call out that there's Hack Manhattan and JC Fab Lab. Last month we had a woman in the crowd who also was talking about a makerspace on the Upper West Side. If you are in the audience, feel free to call that out during member announcements and asks, because I'm happy to also have that shared as well. Great. Again, please contact me if you're interested in presenting in a future meetup. Great. Now, before we get to member announcements and asks, I wanted to give Paul the opportunity to say a few words about a project that he's been working on that would relate to the IoT community. So, Paul, I'm going to pull this up, and you can just cue me when you'd like me to advance the slides.
Yeah. Well, Futurites is a project just to give people forecasting and insight on basically what kind of new technologies it's going to have from a societal standpoint by recording stories from a future context, like IoT. And basically, it's embracing the old form of media, where media is popular because it's good, not because it's search engine friendly or because it connects to your social networks. So it really wants, our content, we want to be compared to, like you would compare a great movie director or a great author as opposed to a great blogger who appears in the top of a search engine, which everyone's trying to do. That's one of the main ambitions of the project. And we're going to be having a weekly club where we just come together to talk about basically like things like how will IoT have an impact in the future? Will people become more concerned about cybersecurity? What are going to become the new industries of the future as a result of IoT? We talk about it from a philosophical, we're going to do like every week like meet at a Starbucks. We talk about, philosophy on basically high tech. You can skip this slide. Basically, when I just put this up, this is just an example that nowadays content creators, we don't want content creators like a Vine person who's considered producing great content because they make great 6-second videos. That's not what we're looking for in contributions. We want people to contribute not because their content they think will go viral, but because it's interesting to read. Okay, and it's basically on the concept that life imitates art, because of course a lot of things that we're seeing from science fiction movies, like whether it be Minority Report, Total Recall, or even Idiocracy, is basically having some elements of truth, and maybe we'd like to be able to brag that some of the stories that we're really writing about are coming true. I mean, I had a story that a President Trump kind of person would become a top candidate, but I wrote a while ago. But okay, you can go to the next slide. And it does have some dystopic elements. Like we thought about, like an example of the story we're going to do is like the stories. Have you ever heard of the Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, the Twilight Zone episode, where the lights are being controlled by some alien force? Well, we're going to have stories where it's being controlled by some hacking IoT, where it's basically more within the realms of reality. Because all the stories that are written are within the realms of reality. So I guess it's somewhat compared to The Onion in the sense that it's based on fact, but The Onion's satire, we are more, I guess, sci-fi. We're not going to have an article about Miss Universe is Trump's VP, you know what I mean? But we might have articles about President Trump creating the Department of Cybersecurity. Okay, and that's, and we do plan to have a crowdfunding campaign too. And it's going to be in the form of a print publication, just to give people an idea that we're not trying to produce something for the internet. Because most stuff, when you think about producing for the internet, it's just about producing to go viral, or if it's only on the internet, it's just because it's not good enough to be printed as a book. But we will be online as well. And we want to have limited advertising when we set it up, because we don't want our content to be motivated by advertisers. And okay, and that's it. So, and I mentioned I'm seeking co-founder, any kind of contributors, and okay. So you can skip the rest of the slides and.
Great, thank you, Paul.
Okay, no problem.
Great. So before we tee up Bojan from HYPR Corp, wanted to now move into member announcements and asks. So Paul, if you could take the wheel and just call on folks who raise their hand, and anyone who has, again, guys, anything interesting in terms of whether it's a conference you're seeing, a prototype you're working on, a problem you're trying to solve, an IoT job that looks interesting, please feel free to shout it out. Or to raise your hand and Paul will call on you. Thanks.
Yes. Yes. You have a question?
Announcement.
Okay.
So, hi all. I'm Chris with the Things Network New York. We're building a free, distributed, and open source data network for IoT here in New York. We're looking for volunteers to help build out the network. We need coders, graphic artists, PR people, and just people excited about open source. So you can find me or go to thethings.nyc to find more. Thanks.
Thank you. And just to chime in, the Things Network had presented at an earlier meetup this year, and it was really a fascinating model and something people were very excited about. So definitely check it out.
Yeah, and if anyone else has questions, please raise your hand or come forward. Okay.
My name is Daoud. I have a PhD in computer engineering with a focus on machine learning and convolutional networks to extract human behavior from mobile and wearable devices. And I run a startup called 2 Cents, and we're looking at taking the behavioral information, location information, digital interaction information, and creating behavioral biometrics, which is very similar to something you'd see with a thumbprint, except it happens passively in the background, and it doesn't identify a user, it doesn't connect them to their identity, it just tells you that the person you're talking to is the person you think you're talking to. And we're looking for interesting projects and partners, so if anybody wants to collaborate or come work with me, come see me after class and we'll talk. Company is 2 Cents, TWOSEN.SE. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Any more announcements or asks?
Yes, we
Just
do.
one more, Linda. Hey guys, this is Naveen. Company's name is One Gotham. So we're building enterprise AI. We're building with Siri for the enterprise. So if you think of an AI client, right now it's consumer, so it's chatbot for cake, messaging, that kind of thing. But imagine that for the enterprise. So we're building that. We would need anybody, if you have people in the procurement departments of any large corporations, small corporations, hit me up or just email talk to me at onegotham.com. Thank you.
Thanks. And we'd also like to have Shane come back.
I'm going to take the mic twice. I'm going to do this on a selfish basis. We are also looking for RF engineers or firmware engineers. So if anyone's interested, come find me. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else have a question or announcement or?
I'll say something.
Okay, from Jolly.
I'm Jolly, I'm with the Internet Society. It's always a lot going on. This week, where we are is in Cancun, in Mexico, where it's the OECD meeting, but they're actually discussing important things down there, like allocations of spectrum globally, which will affect IoT. Today there was a very good conversation about security, and we've got a guy down there who's just basically capturing it on camera. It's on our YouTube Internet Society.
Okay. Thank you.
Great.
And we have Jonathan here from EventFlow.
Thank you, Paul. So EventFlow is an iOS app. Sorry, no Android right now. But we feel like Meetup events get niched into the Meetup world, the Meetup app. What we've done is we've taken all the Meetup events, all the Eventbrite events, everything on Ticketmaster, TicketWeb, Ticketfly, pulled them into one app. So you can follow any venue that you like, any organizer you like Internet of Things New York, the event tonight, thank you, Linda, NYC Tech Happy Hours, Paul's group. You can follow the New York Yankees, you can follow any performer, you can follow anything you want event-wise on EventFlow. Please check it out.
Thank you, Jonathan. And is there anyone else? We got another person. And also, please come to the front if you wish to ask a question.
Hello, good evening. My name is Nir. I'm from East West Pioneers in Taiwan. We are a consulting company in Taiwan that can provide you connection to the manufacturing world in Asia and also an IoT association in Asia. If you have any interest, if you are entrepreneurs that are building something and getting into the kind of mass production phase, we can be very helpful to you. Please find me later if you have any interest. Again, the name is East West Pioneers and my name is Nir. Thank you.
Okay, and we'll allow for 2 more people, and toward the end, everyone will have time, so. Yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Chachamaru from Japan. I work in Tokyo and I work in a media/web development company, and we are starting up an IoT select shop e-commerce website in Japan because, you know, in America the IoT is very hot, but in Japan it's actually kind of not. So we want to spread things in Japan, so if anyone's interested in selling or selling your products in Japan, please contact me. My name is Chachamaru and our service will be .studio. Thank you.
And, you know, I guess in terms of him, you know, QR codes I know are very popular in Japan too, so if anyone's ever had trouble trying to do a QR code, I guess Japan's the place to be, so. And we got, last person?
So tonight's topic is biometric security. And basically, how many folks, you can raise your hand so other people can see, have had a focus in biometrics or a familiarity with biometrics? Okay, great. That just might be helpful to the speaker, even though I can't see everybody. So we know, oh, that's fine, you can flip it around. So we know that, you know, as I kind of note up here, that the use of passwords, even when you have a 2-factor hardware software solution, presents some insecurities and inefficiencies, so that can be a challenge for IoT. We also know that malware can spoof an authenticated user, their identity, and unlock a smart node without the proper credentials. So some of you may have remembered how, like, in the earlier days of IoT, when there were smart locks, if there was a vulnerability, it presented an issue where, you know, people's front door can get kind of hacked and unlocked, and that's kind of the opposite effect that consumers are going for there. So by embedding a validation capability right into the smart device, so whether it's a smart lock, a smart car, or other, you know, consumer or industrial devices, authentication is split across both the user's mobile device and the device itself. So, you know, we know that biometric authentication, it's already, you know, enjoyed some consumer adoption. So you're there at Samsung Accelerator. We know that, you know, the new Apple and Samsung phones have biometric capabilities. And then, you know, it was, gosh, how many years ago that the IBM ThinkPad had the finger swipe as a biometric sensor. So I wanted to just quickly show an interesting segue into HYPR Corp, who is our guest tonight. So here we go. Great. So now I wanted to introduce tonight's presenter. So we're fortunate to be joined by Bojan Simic. Bojan is the CTO of HYPR Corp. He was previously a senior application security engineer at Aspect Security. So he did things like perform penetration tests, threat modeling, and security code reviews of web apps. So he has a background in identifying vulnerabilities associated with web apps and network software. And in a previous life, he was a developer for e-commerce and market research companies. So Bojan is from HYPR Corp, and Basically, he'll tell you a little bit more about them, but since, again, we like the focus of all our talks to be both educational, and then as part of that education, it's helpful to hear about HYPR Corp as well. But just to let you know a little bit more about them, they focus on biometric authenticators, such as fingerprint sensors, cameras, and microphones. They don't store biometric templates in a centralized database. That way users can authorize transactions without exposing that sensitive data to the internet. And basically they combine biometrics with public key cryptology, and that's kind of a decentralized approach. So without further ado, please welcome Bojan.
So as she said, my name is Bojan. Eastern European in origin, just like most people that work for our company. Which is either a really good thing or a really bad thing. I'm the CTO of HYPR, like she said. We've been doing this for a couple of years now, and like she said, we focus on biometric security, mostly for the enterprise side and the IoT actually. So I'd like to start out just by talking about toasters. So this is a toaster. Quick question, when you go to, where do people buy toasters? Bed Bath & Beyond. When you go to Bed Bath & Beyond to buy a toaster, what's the #1 quality that you kind of look for? Yes?
Like the ability to toast bread, maybe?
Yes. You should be able to toast bread. So when you put Pop-Tarts in your toaster, and you push down the lever, really good tasting Pop-Tarts should come out eventually, which is good. The one thing that people don't really think about when they go to buy a toaster at Bed Bath & Beyond is that toasters kill 791 people a year last year. And sharks killed 9 people. So to give you a little bit of context there. Toasters catch on fire all the time. They get used a lot, so breadcrumbs gather on the bottom, and then when you turn it on, they catch fire and they set your house on fire. But most people don't think about that when you buy one at Bed Bath & Beyond. So to access this potentially lethal feature on a toaster, you walk up to the toaster and you push this lever down. And then most people don't think about the fire hazard because you're right there. You kind of know to pour water on it if something goes wrong or whatever. But now think of a world where you're not the only person that can push on this lever, other than the people in your house. But think about if your toaster was connected to the internet and anybody in the world could push the lever. Now, you would think about the potential fire of your toaster a lot more carefully, right? So now we have things like the IoT, which is really a terrible buzzword, but it's the best that describes things. So now you can do things like look at your toothbrush information, as well as fire your sniper rifle through your phone. Which is really cool and it's really kind of scary at the same time. So this is why security is really important when you think about the IoT. Because now you can actually go to the internet and you can buy a smart toaster. And the smart toaster has things like Wi-Fi, has Bluetooth, and you can control it through your phone. And when you control it through your phone, that means potentially somebody else could control it through their phone. So what's really scary about this? To me, the scary thing about it isn't the fact that it's a smart toaster. The scary thing about it to me is that the vast majority of the time that somebody is building a smart toaster, and this goes for any IoT device if you really think about it, the people that made this toaster are also making this toaster. The same people. And they're not used to doing things like secure software lifecycle development stuff, right? They're not used to having to worry about protocol man-in-the-middle attacks with a toaster where you just walk up there and you push the lever. So it's the same people building this stuff, and they're coming out with these products and they're not secure. Same thing really happened when we started doing things like banking on the internet. Most people did it wrong. Most banks ended up getting hacked a few times, and then they learned their lesson slowly. So what I think is one of the biggest challenges in the IoT, and there's a few benches here for the people standing if you.
Yeah, by the way, Bojan, if you have questions,
Okay, thanks. So what I think is the biggest challenge in the IoT in particular, well, one of the biggest challenges is we can't really successfully prove this question of, am I who I say I am when I talk to all these different connected devices? And there's dozens of them in a house now, potentially. So that's the challenge. And the main way of us traditionally solving this challenge is passwords. And that just simply won't do for the IoT. So passwords don't work for the IoT for a bunch of reasons. Okay, so traditionally passwords, they're predictable, so you can guess them. So if you're using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as your PIN, I can go on my phone and unlock your door with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Passwords get hacked a lot. So even if your password is secure, for example, if some website that you're using that password on gets hacked and they steal your password, chances are you probably use the same password for everything or some very similar variation of it, and then that gets used for other systems that you access. Passwords don't work for IoT devices because most IoT devices don't have interfaces. The vast majority of our interfaces to IoT devices is through our phones or through our computers. It's not necessarily through the IoT device itself. So things like smart bulbs, my canary that I have at home, other things. And last but not least, passwords are a user experience nightmare. So every time I want to make a piece of toast, I shouldn't have to type in my 20-character password. I should be able to do that quickly and easily, right? So what we've been seeing as a solution to the password problem really in the last couple of years is this idea of biometrics. And whatever that biometric may be, these are the 4 most common types. Fingerprint is by far the most common because of various reasons. It's actually 64% of all biometrics used now. Face is second. Retina is pretty popular too with 11%. And voice, not many people like to use. So biometrics are becoming a global trend. You use it with things like pay for stuff at Starbucks. You're going to be using it for just about everything in a few years. That's because 4.8 billion of us will have biometrics. We'll be using them day to day by 2020, and that's just a reputable study. So every single major operating system out there is starting to support biometrics, including Android, iOS, Windows. Manufacturers are deploying biometric sensors. My Samsung phone has a biometric sensor. My iPhone has a biometric sensor. Actually, 1 in 3 big companies, Fortune 500 companies, will use biometrics this year, which is really cool. So what all that means is, in 2020, 94% of internet-connected users will have access to biometrics, and the market will be huge. Most of them fingerprint. And this is really happening because of Apple. A couple of years ago, Apple came out with Touch ID on their phones and put that into the hands of about 300 million people. And they're using that for Apple Pay, for a bunch of banking transactions. And the payment industry is really taking to this, including Samsung, because it's the industry where there's a ton of friction to make a mobile payment now. and it's where fraud is very rampant. So it's just an obvious choice to use biometrics for that. And by the way, please feel free to interrupt me at any time.
Yeah, if you have questions, just raise your hand.
Yes.
So, from all those 4 biometrics methods that you just mentioned, how safe they are? You know, there have been many doubts about their safety.
Yeah, I'll talk about that a little bit later.
Okay.
That's probably the most common question. I think this guy.
What's the issue with voice? Only 2%, or what is even the percentage?
I have voice. I have an app on my phone that uses voice. I can show it to you after. Using it in a crowded room doesn't work very well. That's the primary reason.
Is there any interest in the Amazon Echo, Alexa voice that uses a security biometric?
Most people want to use biometrics through their mobile device when they're out and about. So the question was, are people looking to use things like Alexa for voice recognition? Yeah, inside their homes. And even Alexa, I've seen people have issues inside their homes when they're watching a movie or something. But I think it's getting better. It's just right now, like fingerprint in terms of convenience and reliability is so much better.
What percentage of biometric is two-factor? So doing retina and fingerprint as an example?
Not very much, but I'll talk about that a little bit later as well with regards to some of the technology that's being done to make even a single type of biometric two-factor. So the benefits of biometrics, it takes less than half a second usually to log in. They're not easily shared, and you can't forget your biometric, such as your fingerprint. So how can we secure biometric data? Yes?
Someone may have asked this before, but as far as the fingerprint, is biometrics also can use like a sliver in your hand, right? Like a slice across or something like that. Like, why does it have to be? I find it inconvenient, believe it or not, to like put my finger on the sensor here. I'd rather that like the sides of my phone would just automatically recognize that I'm holding it.
So the question was around what if you have a cut on your finger, and can there be other types of biometric sensors on a device to authenticate me besides just a single button on my phone? I think that's paraphrasing it right.
I was saying, I don't like to touch it with my thumb. That's an extra action I have to take. Can the ring around the side do the same thing? Can you apply that technology to the side so it just automatically knows by holding it in a natural state?
So the question was, by the way that I hold my phone, can that be used as a biometric? And that's what's called a cognitive biometric match. It's an additional type of authenticator that's picking up some traction, but it's basically studying, the way you hold your phone, how you swipe your phone, how you do anything with your phone to basically determine a biometric match. And that's certainly a modality that's gaining some traction, but it's not yet widely used. So the question that we really want to ask when we use biometrics is, how can we secure this biometric data? And that's a really tough question. So let me tell you about biometrics historically. Biometrics aren't anything new. They've been part of like James Bond movies and stuff since the 70s. They've been around for a long time, traditionally used by things like government. But what's happened in the last couple of years is that biometric sensors have finally gotten cheap enough and small enough to put on consumer devices, so now you have it on your iPhone. And traditionally, the way that biometrics have been done is, let's take a door lock, for example, that has a fingerprint reader right on it. The way it typically works is you walk up to the door lock, you put your finger on it, and you register your fingerprint to that door lock, but what it really does is it sends that fingerprint data to some server, and that server has all the fingerprint data for all the people who have ever registered in that system. That's really dangerous, because if that central server with everybody's fingerprint data ever gets hacked, suddenly you have a bunch of people's fingerprint data. And when that happens, you can't just change your fingerprint data. It's part of you forever. So that's the only really good thing about passwords is you can change them whenever you want, even though people don't. So that's the dangerous part of using biometrics traditionally. And this is, so a lot of the problems that have been that biometrics have been plagued by is this idea of a central server with a bunch of biometric data being hacked. Think of the OPM hack. I think that was a year or two ago now, where millions of people's biometric data got stolen. So what we want to introduce here is this concept that's called biometric tokenization. Has anybody here ever heard of credit card tokenization? Yeah, so credit card tokenization is this thing where it's what Apple Pay uses. When you make a purchase with Apple Pay, when you touch your phone to wherever you're purchasing something at, you're not actually sending your credit card information, your credit card number over that transaction. You're sending a token that represents your card, and it's a one-time use token. So every single time it's different. So basically what we do and what other companies are doing in this space is this concept of biometric tokenization. Basically, whenever you want to gain access to something, whether it's unlocking a lock or logging into your bank account, you're using a representation of your biometric identity, a token of it. You're not using your actual biometric. And that's really done by combining two things. One is asymmetric cryptography, public key encryption, and biometrics. I won't go into the details of PKI. You get it?
Question.
Yes.
Thank you. What are the prospects of storage in the blockchain?
The Bitcoin blockchain in particular?
Take your pick.
Okay, so the Bitcoin blockchain, you can only store about 40 bytes in a single transaction. That's a very small amount. A lot of, for example, face recognition algorithms have 1 to 2K of biometric data, so that would be tough to do, and it would be expensive to do because it costs you 4 or 5 cents every time you write to the blockchain. Other blockchains could be used, it's possible, but then also if you lose the private key that writes to that transaction, you suddenly lose all historical biometric data as well because the blockchain is public. I'd love to talk about it more if you're interested. I'm kind of a Bitcoin person. So yeah, biometric tokenization puts together these two things. Asymmetric cryptography, PKI, has been around for a very long time, and biometrics have been around for a long time, but they've never been used together up until recently. So biometric tokenization is the secure way of using biometrics to access stuff. Primarily because it's decentralized. So if I am, let's say everybody in this room uses Chase Bank, and everybody in this room is accessing their Chase Bank account on their mobile app, your biometric data never leaves your personal device. It's never stored in a central place. So if you think about the traditional way that people have been doing biometrics, which is storing it in a central place, if I'm a hacker, all I have to do is go hack that central place. And now I have access to everybody's accounts. But if I have to go device by device by device, individually, then all of a sudden, that's no longer economically feasible for me. So that's what we're turning on its head, basically. Everybody's using passwords now, and everybody's passwords are stored in a central place. I hack the central password server, I have access to everybody's account. But when you combine biometrics and PKI, you can no longer do that. So that's the biggest strength. It's revocable. Since it's tokenized, I can revoke tokens, or I can revoke the generation of tokens. So this resolves that issue with biometrics where, I can't change my biometric. So a very common question we get is, around, well, I saw a news article that said that Touch ID got hacked and somebody can spoof my fingerprint. Well, if I'm accessing my Chase bank account through biometric tokenization, if you lift my fingerprint off that door handle, it can't do anything by itself. You also have to have my device at the same time. So you have to have my device and you have to have my fingerprint at the same exact moment to access my account. And that's tough. And that only gives you access to one account. That doesn't give you access to multiple accounts. Now, this also answers, or at least I hope it answers, the question earlier about two-factor authentication around biometrics, which biometrics, in terms of being used with biometric tokenization, it's two-factor by itself because it's something you have, which is your device, and it's something you are, which is your biometric. Because you cannot access that account without that device. You cannot access that account without that biometric as well. It's arguable. Some people think different. We'll agree to disagree. And it's interoperable. So when you use biometrics on a device, you can use any modality you want that device supports. Most devices, modern devices, support voice, face, touch, and eye. Face recognition. This is because most devices now have a fingerprint reader. They also have a camera that's powerful enough to do face recognition as well as eye verification.
Isn't there still a centralized weakness because you still have to have a server that will authenticate that the token is still valid?
Yeah, so the server is there. It validates the tokens. So that is a central weakness. However, the server just contains public keys in the PKI scheme. So if the server gets compromised on your infrastructure, you basically just blow it up. And then everybody has to re-enroll their biometric when you set up a new one. So no accounts really get stolen. Like right now, if a password server gets hacked, I can take that password and log into your bank, your Gmail, etc. But with this concept, no. But for that time, until you realize that your verification server is hacked, certainly.
How is that if people biometric data, I mean, it's hacked, right? I mean, if you're using it with banks and other services, they can use that.
But they can only use it if you have your device. If they have your device.
Do you want to repeat this question, or?
Yeah. So the question is, well, if they steal your biometric data, isn't it hacked, and aren't those services hacked? Well, the fact is, my biometric data is enrolled on a particular device that I'm accessing the service with. So the only way that you can access that service is if you both have the device and you have the biometric. Hopefully that makes sense.
Where on the device would you implement this? It seems like it could be at the application layer, at the operating system layer, or in the hardware of the sensor itself, and each one has a sort of a different trade-off on chances of getting it right the first time, especially in the app, you have multiple implementations, versus difficulty of updating it if it turns out you got it wrong. Operating system updates on mobile are slow to roll out. Hardware updates are almost next device cycle.
So I think the question is, to condense it a little bit, is where would you do the biometric verification on the device? On which layer of the device? On the application layer, on the hardware layer, where?
Well, where would you do the conversion of the private biometric to the less risky token?
Sure. So so to answer it directly is the tokenization aspect is a challenge response mechanism, and this may get a little bit technical. Okay, so it's a challenge response mechanism, and basically the response is a cryptographic signature that is initiated only once you do the biometric verification on the device. Now, where that biometric verification occurs depends on the implementation. If it is the iOS Secure Enclave, for example, with iOS Touch ID, the biometric verification happens on the Secure Enclave. The cryptographic signature occurs on the Secure Enclave, and the signature is sent back for verification. That's the token. Okay. If it's a Samsung device, for example, it has a trusted execution environment.
where you can do the same thing, basically, where you can do the fingerprint verification and the signature on the trusted execution environment. If you're using a software level biometric modality such as face recognition or voice recognition, you can do the storage of the biometric data on the trusted execution environment, but the matching is typically done either on the trusted execution environment or on the OS. But the cryptographic signature usually happens on the trusted execution environment. I'd be happy to talk about it more afterwards. So let's talk about securing the IoT with biometric tokenization. So let's look at the requirements for authenticating to IoT devices. The user experience must be amazing, otherwise people aren't going to use it over pins or passwords. You have to be able to do continuous authentication, and this is where additional biometric modalities other than face, voice, eye, finger come in handy, where you can do cognitive-based matching based on a user's behavior. So you can constantly be authenticating somebody even when they don't know that they're being authenticated, which is really cool. So, for example, a lot of companies are looking into doing something like, if I have a mobile banking app, just to view my balance, which is a very low-level security feature, I can just by the way that I pick up my phone out of my pocket, that is a good enough biometric match to give somebody access to view their balance. But to send a transaction or a wire of $1 million, it may require face recognition, voice recognition, and fingerprint. No passwords, obviously. You need to be able to do machine-to-machine communication. So passing these tokens along machines to be verified by individual machines, because each token is only valid once. This can be a little bit tricky, but it's possible. And support device sharing. So a lot of people, particularly with regards to smart home security systems, somebody wants to give their dog walker or their babysitter temporary access to something, they need to be able to do that. People want to give their kids access to things, they need to be able to do that on the same device. So that's important. The example we're going to look into is using a mobile application for vehicle security. So when you're doing vehicle security, you got to think about a bunch of stuff. If you're authenticating to a vehicle through Bluetooth or through the cloud, you have to think about like man-in-the-middle attacks. You have to think about how to securely store the biometric data on the device. Where do you store it? Do you store it on the device, or do you store it on the vehicle and compare it on the vehicle? Or do you put it in the cloud and then compare it there? Who knows? What if I share my phone with my wife and I don't want her to have the ability to drive a car? And so a lot of things to take into consideration, and with biometric tokenization, it makes things a lot easier because the biometric data always stays on your actual device. And the implementations that we've seen to be gaining traction are actually bypassing the cloud altogether, and wherever there's a BLE connection, actually using the vehicle as the verification server piece that stores public keys. So things that we've seen with our company is car companies using things like Touch ID to unlock the door on a vehicle. They've used eye verification to do a remote start of the car. And they've used voice to arm or disarm a security system. Question?
Can you give the valet example, please? So what happens when you give the car to a valet who doesn't have a device, etc., like that?
Give them a physical key.
Still works?
Still works.
Someone can steal that then.
It's so many times biometric tokenization, for example, a lot of times people implement it because it's more of a user experience benefit rather than a security benefit. But if you're going to be implementing biometrics, you should do it securely. So So yeah, I mean, if you're going to a valet, you give him the hard key, even though you may just keep it in the car and not ever really use it. You give it to him. You know, it's about what are you gonna do? Sit there on the sidewalk and like have him biometrically register to their device? So I'm trying to get to dinner. You know, I'm not gonna sit here and talk to the guy for 20 minutes. To talk about the actual flow of how everything goes, this is a 4-step process mostly. The first step is, and this is just unlocking my car or turning my car on with biometric tokenization. So I walk up to my car automatically notices that my phone is nearby because I've previously registered to it. And that's done through Bluetooth. At that point, my car issues a challenge. So this is the challenge response portion to my mobile phone. On my mobile device, I get a notification, and it asks me to verify my eye, for example. Once I verify my eye, the biometric portion is completed, and then that unlocks the trusted execution environment or secure enclave on my device. And this is where a cryptographic signature is generated. So this is the public key cryptography portion of the equation. The signature is then sent back to the car verifies the signature, and the car turns on. So that's the extremely high level overview of what happens behind the scenes when turning on a car using biometric tokenization. Yes, sir.
Is there like a faster way that could be done, or is it just?
So this happens in like half a second. This is the process, but it typically happens in about half a second. Because think about it, like there have been studies done. I don't know if you guys drive a car. I don't anymore, but when you're walking to your car, at least when I was. Like 99% of the time I had my phone in my hand already, just because I was looking at email or doing whatever. So it's a very natural thing. When you get close enough to your car, you just get a notification, you verify yourself, and then you're in. So it's a very fast process, but this is what happens behind the scene during that.
What happened to implanting chips in your hand to authenticate? What are your thoughts on that?
So I think that's not going to happen for a long time. There have been some people who do that, like there's kits you can buy where you can like implant stuff in you and see if that works, like RFID type of technology. But until that little implant can also like verify my identity through like a blood analysis or something, I don't think it will. There's a lot of cool IoT stuff that's happening, man, with implants in particular. I saw something where like you can put in a sensor where it constantly studies the flow of oxygen to a particular piece of body tissue, and then if oxygen slows down, it knows you're getting cancer in that particular part, which is really cool. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I don't think it's extremely far off, but we're not there yet.
I'm curious about the continuous authentication. For the applications you're seeing, have you seen any indication of what are acceptable performance metrics for it to be viable? Like in terms of precision and recall or false positives, false negatives? Like where does it become viable and below what is it something that is maybe advantageous from a sales point of view but not really from an implementation point of view?
Sure, so cognitive-based biometrics are usually always an add-on. They're never from our experience, they're never the sole biometric authenticator that's being used in a particular implementation. So typically it's deployed. Any cognitive-based biometric sometimes has a lengthy training time, right? So you take the time to train it properly. And just from my experience, it's not used to give somebody the keys to the kingdom. It's used as a baseline in terms of authentication, or it's combined with other types of modalities to provide this level of assurance that a person is who they say they are. So you know, that's my experience. So using it combined with other modalities is where we've seen it used the most. Hopefully that helps.
Scott Stringer at Scott Stringer on Twitter. Anyway, a couple years ago, Facebook Connect really changed a lot of things in the social web, really Web 2.0, where it allowed you to use Facebook to log into multiple websites. So you didn't have to remember all these other passwords, you just tied it to the Facebook system. Is there anyone currently doing that in the biometric space? And is that something that we should see? And what would a company like that, what would that mean for security?
So the answer is not really, because it doesn't really, in my opinion, it doesn't affect the biometric space. So the way that you authenticate to something using Facebook is by using you use an existing token, and you get that existing token by authenticating to Facebook using your username and password. So if Facebook tomorrow was to implement biometrics, they would issue the same token after a successful biometric match. It wouldn't change anything from that perspective. So like technologies, or like identity access management technologies, or like OAuth technologies, or SAML technologies, none of that stuff changes, because all of that stuff happens after you've already proven that you are who you say you are. Just the way of proving am I who I say I am is different.
I guess to follow up on that, the way you're kind of presenting is, it sounds like that most people should implement their own biometric security. Why isn't there just one company that you do the biometric security and that token can be used for all these other apps? Why is it that it's recommended that all these other companies are creating their own version of biometric security then?
So it's different, right? Because if I go to some website, I have an option of authenticate or logging in with Facebook. I have an option with logging in with Twitter. I have an option with logging in with LinkedIn or something. I don't know. Those are all different. So those companies could implement biometric matching themselves, just like they implement password matching themselves. What we do in particular as our company is we provide this capability for companies to do just that. So that's kind of what we do. And any biometric modality that they choose, they can pick. We just provide the back-end service for them to be able to do that.
So Bojan, that was really interesting and helpful info, and kind of speaking about how the two pieces kind of work together. Can you maybe tell, I know you mentioned smart locks and smart cards. I'm not sure how much you're able to kind of publicly talk about, but are there any other kind of interesting use cases you've seen in terms of what you're working on there at HYPR?
Sure. So the vast majority of the projects that we're involved in on the IoT side of things, we have a lot of projects on the enterprise security side of things, but on the IoT side of things in particular, it's mostly around cars and around smart locks in particular. So that's the reason I kind of brought up those two examples. And they're the examples that are honestly the early adopters of such technology, because they've probably tried it in some way or in some shape or form in the past, and now they want to do it actually securely. So those are the industries that we see kind of gaining popularity. We're really trying to build out this infrastructure so that any company who's building any IoT node can do this. But that takes time, and it takes effort, because there's so many different possible configurations of nodes out there. So you want to standardize on the most common chipsets, for example, to be able to do this.
Got it. And just a follow-up question. That's super, because I'm sure within auto there's just tons of different use cases there. Are you finding that it's kind of starting with access and ignition, or are you guys foreseeing that there's certain tokens that are, I guess, certain approaches where you're unlocking different features of the car, or is it kind of very binary where it's like you get access to everything or not through biometrics?
Sure.
And tokenization?
So one project that we're particularly excited about is around smart home security type of scenarios, where you can do a certain type of biometric for. So one example is, if I'm right by my house and I want to disable my house alarm, a fingerprint is good enough. But if I'm in San Francisco and I want to disable my house alarm, I have to do face recognition and fingerprint.
Ah, got it. Great.
So this multimodal, multi-tiered approach to security with biometrics.
It's definitely good for you, Linda, because you're in San Francisco, so.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Philip. What I'm scared about in biometrics is that anybody with using my body, they can unlock something. Compared to the passwords, they need my consent to have my password. What do you think? What do you thought about that?
So that's a good question. So with biometric tokenization, this concept of biometric tokenization, not only do they have to have your fingerprint, they also have to have your device. So unless somebody is literally forcing you, or somebody has been able to lift your fingerprint and they stole your device, it's a possibility. What we're saying, and what biometric tokenization really eliminates, is these scenarios where there are massive credential breaches. So you see these news stories all the time where some website got hacked and millions of people's credentials got stolen. With this concept, that's impossible because you force the hacker to go after individual people, and that's not economically feasible.
So we've seen from some court cases that you can claim Fifth Amendment rights and not give up a combination to a safe, but you have to give up the key. How does biometrics stand?
Yeah, so that's a government issue.
By the way, that's like something we're going to talk about in the weekly philosophy classes I mentioned, but okay, I'll let him go back.
So I personally don't believe that you should be forced. They should be able to compel you to use your biometric, but such is life. It's the reality of things, and unfortunately, that's just how it is. Now, what you have to decide as a consumer is most of the time using a biometric to access something is an opt-in type of scenario, right? So you care about your convenience more than you care about that, and that's something you have to make a decision about. And oftentimes I choose the convenience, man, because I don't want to put in my password every time I have to use Netflix or something. It's terrible. So. Yep.
Any additional questions or comments? Okay. Do you want to mention anything, Bojan?
That's all I
Linda?
got. Thank you, everybody. I'm finished and I'll be here too. So.